won't make jokes about it. There we go.
Well, you said the questions were going to be how I came to go to SAIS.
Well, okay, so let's go ahead and get started, and I'll say a couple things so that we can be sure to track this correctly. I'm Ruth Swanson, and today is April 15th, Tax Day 2011, and I am with Douglas Martin, class of 1956, in San Francisco. And our first question is, what brought you to SAIS when it was not a very well-known school at the time, and you are from Seattle, which probably made it a little bit less less natural progression. So we'd love to hear what brought you to SAIS.
Well, okay, first of all, today isn't tax day. It's Monday's tax day because today is a federal holiday.
I would like to point out that Mr. Martin is an attorney.
And I didn't come from Seattle to go to SAIS. I was at the time at the University of Chicago.
Okay.
And living there. And so it was a question, I guess, of when, in 1951, when I first went to school, I left Seattle. I went to SAIS because I was looking for, well, the University of Chicago had at that time a BA program which consisted of 14 core courses. It was called the Hutchins program. Robert Hutchins had been the president of the University of Chicago. And this BA was not considered fully legitimate by many schools. I interviewed at Columbia. At that time, they had a international relations and a law program where you would do the two together, if you will, and one would seg you into the other. And they would not let me into their graduate program because I was missing hygiene and gym from my the things that I had taken at Chicago.
Wow, that's
physical exercise was not taken very seriously at the University of Chicago. They had done away with football and intercollegiate sports. So you could say one reason I went to SAIS was because Columbia wouldn't take me. And how I got to know about SAIS, I can't tell you. I was looking for an international relations program, and there was one at Tufts. And there was one at SAIS, and there was one at Columbia. And at that time, there were probably not a lot others that were graduate programs in international relations. It's become much more popular. Well, the whole going to school and graduate school and all of that has become much more popular than it was at that time. Much smaller percentage of people went to college and graduate school and so forth. So that's how I ended up in SAIS. Is there that complete the question?
Yes, absolutely.
It wasn't.
And what is your most vivid memory of SAIS? Specifically, was there a course that has also stayed with you?
Well, the work that I enjoyed most was a paper I did on comparative law. That would have been in the second year, and it was on comparing the procedural requirements, civil procedure requirements under the Code Napoleon as it had been adopted in Egypt and in the indigenous courts. In Egypt at that time, well, in the time that I was studying it, they had courts for foreign residents. They would go through one set of courts, and the rest of the Egyptians went through their own legal system. And it was a comparison of the procedural organization of those two court systems. And I enjoyed that because at that time, I doubt if it can be done now, you were permitted to simply go into the stacks at the Library of Congress and find the sections of the books that you're interested in and get a chair and sit down and start to work. So that's my most pleasant memory of the work I did at SAIS.
And you subsequently went to law school, so did you know that you would eventually go to law school, or did this?
I did,
yes?
yeah. International law was of interest to me. I took international law from the dean of, who taught that course at the time at SAIS.
And who was the dean at the time?
I thought you were going to tell me.
Wilcox?
No, he was one of the founders with Nitsi and Kaduri of the school, and it's one of the names that has escaped me. But probably if we Google founders of SAIS, somebody will have put his name down. He was an attorney himself. He had practiced law, I think, in Boston, maybe in Washington at the State Department or something of that nature, because he taught international law at the school.
So that was a particular academic experience. The social life has quite a reputation. How did you enjoy the?
Does it have a reputation? I didn't know it had a reputation.
Well, at the Florida Avenue facility, a lot of the students lived there in the early years.
They did, and it was, as far as I know, pretty much anybody who wanted to live there could live there. They had extra rooms. One of the persons who I was closest to, who was most friendly with, was a medical student. Was going to school at George Washington, and they had an extra room and were delighted to have it rented to him. So that's how small it was, and also, if you will, kind of an indication of the tenuousness of its finances.
Did you live
it could use a few extra bucks.
Yeah. Did you live on Florida Avenue?
I did. I lived at 1906 on the second floor.
Wonderful. And so how has SAIS fit into your career path, and your life since? You and I spoke a little bit earlier, but we'd love to hear how SAIS fit into the path.
Well, it didn't. It didn't fit into my career path. As I indicated, I was interested in international law and international relations. I had in the back of my mind that one of the things I might like to do would be to go to the State Department and work in international law with the United States as my client. However, it was only kind of a half idea. And when I finally got to law school, the law interested me much, much more than international relations as such, as something that I thought I could do competently. And and plus the fact it was clear to me, even when I was at SAIS, that the State Department is, among other things, a very large bureaucracy. And I don't do well in large organizations. And so putting those, on the one hand, the thought that I really didn't want to get involved in that large an organization, and the fact that I very much enjoyed the practice of law, led me to shuck the international relations portion of my earlier idea about what I might become, and instead simply become a lawyer.
And what kind of law did you practice, or do you practice?
Well, I've become a securities specialist.
Very interesting. And with the career that you did pursue, what do you consider the highlights? What do you like to recount of your career as a securities attorney?
Well, I could give you a short biography of it if I could send it to you, because I happen to have a need to to write that out for another group. But the thing that has been valuable for me is I have developed a close relationship to a handful of clients that I've had for more than 30 years. And together they have developed an association of independent broker-dealers, which has permitted them to create a professionalism in their work that would not have been possible, I think, if they had proceeded separately. And I've enjoyed the relationship with those clients and with the association which we built together. Is among the things that I've found most satisfying in my work.
Wonderful. And finally, what advice do you have for today's students?
Well, I assume that today's students are much more go to SAIS with a more precise idea of their own capabilities and their own future trajectories than I had. I was 19, 20 when I went to SAIS, and I think probably the average age of the person who goes to SAIS today is above more than that.
It's around 26.
Yeah.
And most of them have international experience.
Right. Okay. So they are. You probably will find that more of them, in fact, go into careers that use the education they had at SAIS. SAIS has informed my interests very deeply. I still follow and study some of the same things that I studied when I was at SAIS, but it has not informed or affected materially or substantially my occupation or my career. Now, I married a French woman. You said that you had an anecdote from somebody who said that because he could speak French, they sent him to Saigon. Well, maybe, but I don't think so. I might not have married a French woman if I hadn't had French at SAIS. But
Where did you meet her?
I met her here.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't meet her in France. But I think probably your current student is not as likely as I was. I mean, to have something else. Obviously, that happens. I mean, we're always ready to change careers and do something else if the opportunity comes up and it fits into our abilities and the things that we want to do. But my guess is that your current students can draw no lesson from my life.
Oh, I don't believe that's true, but I believe that that's what you will tell us.
No, I think that's the practical fact
Okay.
of the matter.
So before we conclude, is there anything you'd like to share? Anything you wish I had asked?
Well, you should, you didn't ask it, but I'm going to tell you that you should really get in touch with Frank Short, because he was there before I was there, he was there after I was there, and he is still very sharp. He's in his 80s, but I think if he will do it, he might not do it.
I would be happy to go to Paris to ask him
well,
questions.
that's what I think you should do.
Absolutely.
I don't think you should do this by telephone. And he doesn't have a computer, and he will not do anything by email. He is not adopted modern technology and thinks it's a lot of guff. So you might have to go to Paris to get his story.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.